Chair recognizes gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul, for 5 minutes.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
If the debt is the problem, and I agree, the debt is the problem, that for us to come here and raise the debt by $2.4 trillion is the solution. That just baffles me. So I see the only solution, and that is to cut spending. Now, the reason we don't cut spending is one side loves entitlement, and the other side loves war. And even this token attempt, $100 billion of cuts when we have this huge deficit, but there's no mention of cutting military spending. I don't want to cut defense spending. This military spending doesn't defend us. It makes things worse. Our problem in this country doesn't come only from the Congress. It comes from the people. The people still have a strong appetite for big government programs. They're not willing to cut. They think government can take care of us from cradle to grave and that we can be the policemen of the world. So someday, we as a country, we as a people, and we as a Congress will have to say, what should the role of government be? The founders had a pretty strong suggestion. They wrote a constitution and said the government should be very limited. And the government should be protecting our liberties and providing national defense and a sound currency. We don't do any of that. We've embarked on a course that was destined to end badly, and this is where we are today. We're engaged in the most difficult and a very bad way of defaulting, and that is through the destruction of the currency. Today, we have an inflation rate of 9%, and that is defaulting. So if a government can default and print money, and if they can get a 50% inflation rate over a period of time, they've cut that debt in half. That is the goal. That is what's happening, and that is very serious. When a country gets indebted to the degree that we're indebted, the country always defaults. This is historic, especially if the country is a significant country. But if you really wanted to live within the technicalities of law, there's a very simple thing you could do. We owe the Federal Reserve $1.6 trillion. Well, that's not a real debt. They bought those Treasury bills with money out of thin air. We could just write that off or quit paying the interest, tide ourselves over and get down to serious business and cut back and live within our means. And that would be a solution. But to increase the national debt will only encourage another type of default, and that's what we're going through. Right now, we're in the early stages of rampant inflation, which means we're going to be hit with higher prices and higher interest rates. That is going to be a tax. So if we don't understand this default will not be because we don't send out the checks. We will send out the checks. It will be defaulted on because people will get their money back or they will get their Social Security checks and it won't buy anything. That is much worse than facing the fact that we not raise the debt limit and work our way out of this. That is devastating economically and it's devastating politically because we just saw a taste of what happens, how the anger is built when you see other countries in Europe now defaulting and can't pay their bills. So this is more significant than ever because we provide the reserve currency of the world.
Gentleman's time has expired.